All right, guys, good morning. It's early on set. Well, it's only 10 o'clock in the morning. It's not that early. Um, got a good show for you. We got a gentleman by the name of Randy Rogers coming on the line this morning. He is a Hollywood producer and a metaphysical author and teacher. He runs a company called Telefilm out in Los Angeles, and he wrote a book called The Key of Life. And basically, in this he had a life-changing experience and one that has led him on a journey of self-discovery and brought him to a better understanding of our metaphysical lives. The Key of Life, a metaphysical investigation, is a gripping, true story about who we are, why we are here, and how we are all connected. And the very essence of the bond of humanity is meticulously documented as you follow the author's quest, first for the truth and then the proof towards an ending that is lovingly revealed to be merely the beginning. Randy Rogers is now also doing past life regressions using hypnosis. We can only truly understand why and who we are today by finding out and understanding who we once were. He conducted past life regression workshops all over the country. He has many wonderfully intriguing and exciting stories from his journey through writing his book and doing the workshops. And I know for a fact he actually is very busy because when we scheduled this interview, we had to change it a couple times because he was invited to several things. And I talked to him about an hour ago. He seems like a very amazing guy, and I've been following him on Facebook. So I'm looking forward to having him on the show. And I've got Sylvianne in here.
Good morning, everybody.
And I made her get a mic to be able to talk this morning because I just kind of like her being on the show. And this has been an incredible week, guys. If you can feel the energy going on in the world, it's just incredible. And I know that if you were looking at it with your human eyes, it would seem like there's just a lot going on. And you're right, there is a lot going on. But what I want you to keep in mind and pay attention to is that there's a whole lot of growth going on. And even though it looks very painful and things, very sad, and there's a lot of people angry, don't look at it that way. That's called growing pains. Last week we had in 1,500 cities people standing up and saying that they want to change. There is earthquakes going on all over the world. There is an economy, a global economy that's not doing so well. But at every time there's massive change for the good, we always have to walk through hell to get there.
Yes.
And that's because we create the hell that we have to walk through.
It's the only way people come to change.
But I want you to think about it this way. Every time there's a change in your life, we tend to go into resistance because it's something new and our fear kicks in. And as a result of that, that manifests throughout our world. But also, I just call it growing pains. It's kind of like when you were a little kid and you were growing and you had a pain in your body. It hurt, and that's why we call those growing pains what they were. Your body was literally stretching and pushing out and doing the things that it needed to get bigger and become a full-grown adult. The same thing's happening to the earth, and we even mentally went a little bit crazy at points when we were a kid because we didn't have all the necessarily physically we weren't necessarily where we needed to be emotionally where we were needing to be an adult. And the last layer of the neocortex doesn't even form until you're 21. So then that's why you need your parents to kind of guide you because emotionally you're just not where you need to be. So that's what the earth is going through right now. It's growing up.
Right.
And we're going into a more spiritually based world. Now, spiritual doesn't necessarily mean religious. Spiritual means whole to me, where we're bringing the body, mind, and spirit. And so it's just something that I just get overjoyed talking about it because it's very obvious. I was actually producing a video with my friends Justin and Julian about a month and a half ago. We did all the filming and we were calling it "It's Time," meaning it's time to say yes to your soul. And then we've been so busy we haven't been able to work on it recently. And then I realized that it hit me. It's not time. We're knee deep in it.
Yeah, it's past time.
It's past time. We're right here in the now, and it's like, are you ready to say yes? Are you ready to stop letting people tell you how to feel, how to think, what to do, and are you ready just to be open to the possibility that you're not ready to be open? Are you ready to say yes, that you are an empowered being? and that you make the choices in your life.
That's right. Are you in or are you out?
Are you in or are you out? And exactly it. Let's follow your heart. And let's go forward.
Absolutely.
And
do it joyfully. Because if you're not doing it joyfully, you're not following your heart.
And in love.
And joy, love, and happiness. Those three things always bring you right back around to one of the other three things.
And that's why I love Snuggle Tuggle, because...
Snuggle Tuggle is sweet. You have no idea.
So, guys, this is what we're coming into. I mean, I've studied everything. Well, we're going from a third-dimensional world into a fourth and fifth-dimensional world. We're going into the age of Aquarius. We're leaving the age of Pisces. The Mayan calendar is getting ready to come to what we would consider the end of this cycle. There's so much stuff going on, and I have friends that study that and know a lot more about it than I do. But what I do is I just feel it, and I know I don't even have to feel it. It's pretty obvious that changes are happening in this world.
When you're aware, you could see the changes happening. When you're aware, you not only see the changes that are happening around you, but you also see the changes that are happening inside of you.
Yes.
And that's where the change really needs to be in each and every one of us. We cannot change the world outside of us until we change the world that's inside of us and what we want to perceive.
Yep. So if you one of the chapters I'm writing in the book right now is I'm talking about the whole book is basically about your inside world and about your outside world manifests exactly how you feel on the inside. Well, while I'm doing this, I'm channeling this, but experiencing it in my body, and I'm sitting and thinking about, we set an intention out there, but automatically that programming says no. So, but I want you to really pay attention to that. If you were to say right now, most of you probably have jobs, or you have a company, or you have something out there that's bringing in a living for you to pay your bills.
Right.
If I was to say to you right now, quit that job, what immediately comes to your mind?
No!
I can't do that. I have to be able to pay my bills. I have to be able to pay rent. I have to be able to pay my car. I have to be able to do this. But those same very people are saying, I'm tired of this job. So automatically you're barricaded and trapped into your desire, and you're barricaded into your fear.
Right.
And as well as the possibilities. And you can't even see the possibilities because the fear clouds it. So right there, most people don't think that manifestation works. Or they'll see little miracles that come in, but it's really not anything that really is significant to them. Well, as you see right here, you're already self-defeating yourself before it ever comes into fruition.
That's only because you said the word no. That word no automatically stops all creative processes whatsoever.
And you said I can't.
And I can't. And automatically the world doesn't understand, or the universe, when it comes to manifesting, doesn't understand, what's in your mind if you're just thinking about it or if you're actually doing it.
Yep.
So when you're in the positive, it allows your soul to breathe.
Yep.
You're allowing your soul to create and to become who and what you want to be.
Yep.
But once you say the words, no, I can't, I'm not able to, anything in the negative, then you're automatically telling yourself, you're not worthy.
Yep.
You're telling yourself you don't love yourself because you won't give yourself the opportunity to even try something new.
Yep.
And that's scary.
Yep.
Because
it's
fear.
And here's the addition. Here's the addition onto that. Let's say you allow the possibility. But as soon as you bring in the possibility, your mind starts going, well, I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. Maybe I'll get this, maybe I'll get a loan or a grant to do this, maybe I'll get this, maybe I'll get a job. You're already in the future.
I know.
And automatically, because you're looking at all that instead of letting it just flow,
right,
you are blocking.
Yep.
And because you're looking for the comfort zone to grasp onto to make it okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, being told that we're coming up to the end of this segment, so so I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll be right back after this song. Okay, so we're talking about manifesting our world, and since Randy's going to be coming on the show here pretty soon, I wanted to take a second to talk about past lives, because this gentleman is a past life therapist. And one of the things that we have that we don't even realize is we have sometimes past life experiences. Well, actually, we have a lot of past life experiences that make up the character, or make a character makeup of who we are. And I want to talk to Randy about this a little bit when he gets on, but what I found in meditation one day is that karma literally is the experience of what we send out there and comes back with our thoughts. But more importantly, what I find very interesting about this is I was sitting in meditation one day and I felt all my past life experiences and saw them.
You did.
And it just like thousands of little aspects of things going on within the collective consciousness. And maybe thousands is not even a good word, but the point is I could just feel and see all this, and I saw this sphere with all these little dots and lines that go to it, and that made up the consciousness of what my soul is. And I saw this little aspect as me called Jeremy, living in this time and space.
Right.
And so, but all the experiences that are going on with all the rest of them, they all have an experience going on. So the ego that is Jeremy doesn't comprehend, but it feels. And the ego grasps onto that, and it can't let go of the fact that it might have been a murderer.
Right.
2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, or in some other planet or some other dimension.
Right.
It doesn't understand because it only sees this linear space that is here, and it can't grasp onto that whole picture. And so that's one of the reasons why we live through the heart. And so when you're doing healing work, such as what Randy does, we, past life therapists help you let go of that.
Cool.
So that you don't have it affecting you in this life anymore. I have a technique through meditation, stuff like that I do, and I help my clients walk through it as well. But the important thing you want to really see is that, that programming can prevent you from having the things you want in this life. And really what it does is it keeps you from being in the flow.
Right.
And so that programming that says no, 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 it's a fear, and it's because we can't see things beyond what's going on in all these other aspects that are going on, or past lives, or whatever we want to call them. So, that's something very important to take in consideration, because you are not just this body. You are a great, vast, multidimensional being. And when you act like you're powerless, you're not including the whole of who you are.
Right.
And so that's something that most of us are missing. And we're just putting our faith in something that we can't see, or really it's outside of ourselves, and everything is inside of us. But
yeah. I just wanted to mention again, just as we went off air, how when we get into the flow, how do we teach ourselves not to get scared and sabotage ourselves? I think that would be a great step to include in any kind of meditation or soul teaching is, okay, once you get there and you've opened your eyes and that you see that you're going in the direction that it is that you're manifesting, how is it that you can stay there without self-sabotaging yourself?
Well, and that's a good question, because when you really think about it this way, when you get in that moment of fear, you want to take a second just to calm yourself and breathe, because that when you get into fear, your body clenches up.
Right.
And so you want to relax that clenching feeling that's going on inside of you. But because that's what's going hold the energy up to block. And so because there's a flow that goes through your body, and it's the Chinese called it qi, or life force energy, and that life force energy gives you the life that you need to be able to sustain your life. But to your other point is that I look at those fears and I ask why it's there.
Yeah.
And that I say, what are you holding on to that I can't see?
Right.
And so that it'll start coming forward, and I can let go of that, because it could be something that happened 200 years ago.
Exactly.
It could be something that happened 20 years ago. It doesn't really.
It could also have happened to somebody else, and you see their experience too,
Yep.
and realize that you're just grabbing onto their fear.
It could also have happened to your parents, because there is post-traumatic stress that comes through your parents.
Right.
And they call it. I mean, they say that right in the Bible. You inherit the sins of our fathers.
Right.
And so, it's a lot of things, but the idea is that we let go of it so that it no longer blocks us.
Right.
And so, and when the other thing I do is that I say this: my divine plan is manifesting right now. I want it to come in divine timing and divine order.
Right.
I am divine royalty, but I will wait for the divine plan to work in my highest and best good.
I love that.
And so then, the Christians have it. This is where they got it, and then the Buddhists also say this as well. And the Christians say, I put it in God's hands. The reason why they do that is because they know that their physical ego is going to grasp onto it and try to create it. But even when you study the law of attraction says, and anything in paganism, when you do a ritual for a spell or something like that, they say do the spell and then forget about it. Mm-hmm. And then the law of attraction, you visualize it, but that's it. Once you get done visualizing it, you let it go.
That's exactly what the Christians do too. They pray through Jesus Christ's name, and they let it go. Yeah. You let God and let go. I mean, it doesn't matter what religion or who you are. It's the same thing.
So we're all arguing and saying the other one's wrong, but they're all similar, just different words.
Exactly.
And so what I'm trying to say here is that the key thing is the reason why you let go is because your human mind wants to go, when's it going to happen? 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 You're like a little kid. It's kind of like Bart. It's like Bart Simpson when he was driving in the car and he says, "Were we up Mount Shasta yet? Are we there?
Are we there yet? Yeah.
And because we're so excited about the possibility, but if you're doing that, then you're not living now.
Right.
And so. And sometimes you can see that there's something changing. Obviously, here at the radio station, we have had a lot of changes over the last month, and it took all of us a while to adjust. Mm-hmm. And
we had to regroup, rethink, and put it back together again.
And that's okay.
And that's the way life works.
And that's the way life works because everything is a lesson. And the key thing is that we get stuck because we had an expectation, and then we're worried about what other people think and everything else, and it really doesn't matter what other people think. And our expectations change.
Right.
And as soon as we set an intention out there, the universe just starts growing and pushing things in the direction that we need it to go into.
Right.
We just don't realize it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the hardest thing for us to grasp onto. It was one of the hardest things because I read The Secret, and I was like, oh, it's just not working. And I had done all kinds of rituals and. I remember I was doing this one spell years ago, and I don't even do spells anymore, but I did this one spell, and I did a pentagram, and I wrote what I wanted and what I wanted it to be done, and I'd focus on it every day for 30 days.
Oh, and what you wanted to be done.
And what it wanted to be done. No, it had to be that specific. And when it didn't happen that specific, then I was having a problem with it. And so, but why not just live like you're at Disney World? Like, when a kid goes to Disney World, and they walk in and they see that there's the stores you walk in and Mickey's over off to the side, and they see that castle off in the distance a little bit down the street. They're not thinking about when are they getting to the castle. They're thinking about, wow, I'm actually here.
Right.
And you're looking at the castle already wanting to be there. This child is just getting excited about the fact that they're actually here. I'm actually at Disney World. They're not thinking about all the roller coasters.
They're looking around. They're seeing the people. They're smelling the smell in the air. Yeah. They understand there's food up ahead.
And that's why Jesus said that the ones that become like a child will inherit the kingdom of heaven.
Because that's where the happiness is in the state of that childhood of the wonderment of being in the moment.
Yep, and that's the key thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, guys, if you're out there worried, you're missing a whole lot. We're gonna be right back after this break, and we're gonna call Randy, and then we'll have him on the show very shortly.
Yay!
Good morning, guys, and we're back, and we have Randy Rogers on the line to be talking about his book, The Key to Life: A Metaphysical Investigation. I kind of gave you a little bit of his bio earlier. Randy's a hypnotherapist specializing in past life regressions. His research into the afterlife is documented, of course, in his book that I just mentioned, The Key to Life, A Metaphysical Investigation. He was professionally trained and certified under the America's leading past life therapist, Dick Stuffen. Randy's work has taken him across the country lecturing and conducting workshops using hypnosis to explore past lives. He's been a featured guest on the nation's premier overnight radio program Coast to Coast with George Norrie. And Randy's private individual regression sessions have helped many to discover and understand and balance the root karmic lessons they are here to learn. Randy Rogers is also the president of Telefilm Incorporated, a Los Angeles-based production company. His career spans 4 decades of working in the newspaper, television, and motion picture industry. During that time, he covered every type of major news event from George McGovern's 1972 election bid to the Exxon Valdez oil spill in 1989. His company Telefilm has handled the promotion of some of the world's largest motion production, including The Matrix, Harry Potter, Pearl Harbor, Batman, Superman, Shrek, Toy Story, Iron Man, and Indiana Jones. Randy grew up in Pennsylvania in Johnstown, which is a really great area, by the way. I love Altoona and State College in Johnstown. For his first camera from Green Stamp's catalog on his 10th birthday, that camera started him on a lifelong path as a photographer. His first part-time job in 1969 as an usher at the State Theater subtly foretold where that path would be heading. From that day forward, Randy worked in the news and motion picture business. I'm very happy to have Randy on the line on the show this weekend, and I know that everybody will enjoy him being on the show. Randy, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Definitely, it's very much a pleasure to meet you, and especially so early in the morning where you're at. Thank you for waking up and coming on the show with such a busy schedule.
I'm used to getting up early every morning. I have an 11-year-old son, and we're up at 5:45 every morning.
Oh, are you?
Ready for school, so.
Yeah. Parents know how to get up early, that's for sure.
I think they have to.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
It starts when they're a baby.
So the key to life and metaphysical investigation. I've read parts of it, obviously, over the past few months since I've had it, and a lot of this is about understanding yourself and where you come from, and as well as your past lives. Can you tell us a little bit about, tell the audience about how you started on the journey to writing this book?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's the book is the key of life, not to life. I know that a lot of people switch those of and to around, but it's the key of life, and within the book you find out how I got that name for it too, because that was kind of part of the story. But what really had happened with it, like you said, I had grown up in that western Pennsylvania town of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which is famous for the floods, and that happened back in 1889, and over 2,200 souls lost their lives that day, and it was a huge natural disaster back there. And that's the town I grew up in, is steel mills and the coal mines and all that. My father worked in a steel mill, and I got a camera when I was 10, and I started on that path of being a photographer. And my background, in anything metaphysical though was zero. There was no. I was raised in this Catholic family. I was an altar boy, and I went to this Catholic church, and that was my extent of any kind of knowledge about anything spiritual. And so when these events started happening to me, what had happened was I'd worked back there a year in the newspaper. Then I moved on. Then I went into television right away. And a couple more years I spent in that local market. Moved to Phoenix, worked there 13 years as a television news cameraman. And then I moved on to NBC Network News with Tom Brokaw and the Today Show and all those shows. And was working out of Burbank. And after 20 years of that, I moved into the motion picture industry. And that was by the time the 90s rolled around. It had gotten kind of tabloid in news, and I wanted to get out, and I went into promoting these motion pictures and doing all the behind-the-scenes work on that. Well, that's what I was doing when these events started happening with me. It was over 16 years ago that I just built a new house, and I had a feeling, the day that I moved in, I had this overwhelming feeling roll over me while I was back in my office that a friend of mine from grade school, from back in Johnstown when I had gone to grade school in the 60s, I had this feeling that this girl had passed away, this girl named Kathy Lynch. And I couldn't get that thought out of my mind, and the newsman in me wouldn't let go of it. I just kept on trying to find out what happened to her. I didn't tell anyone I was having dreams or premonitions or anything about her, but I just started looking for her. And over a year's time, I was searching around, and finally I had some more dreams and out-of-body experiences, which I didn't even understand what those were at the time. But when I did find her by July of '96, she had passed away, and what she passed away from was the same thing that I was working on. I was working on a video on breast and ovarian cancer at the time for this big ball out here in Los Angeles called the Fire and Ice Ball, and they raised funds for the UCLA segment that do research on these cancers. And when I found out that Kathy had died from ovarian cancer, I could clearly see there was a synchronicity going on. And I'm working on this, and she's coming to me. And so I continued trying to pursue and understand why she was reaching out to me from beyond the grave, so to speak. And that involved me following these series of synchronicities that were now, I was readily, easily able to recognize in my life, that there were too many what people would call coincidences happening. So I just started following these, and they led me down this incredible path and into this story that I've written called The Key of Life. And where that path led was to a Russian acupuncturist who could put some needles in me, and I started telling her who I was, who she was, and how we were all connected.
Oh,
Awesome.
that's incredible.
That is incredible.
That is very incredible. So, you talk a lot about synchronicity. Are you still experiencing that now?
Oh yeah. That's that's funny, because one of the stories I could tell is about synchronicity, and how that exact question was my publicist when I heard her 2 years ago, and on that day, I'll never forget that day. It was September 21st of 2009, and I hung up the phone, and she said, put down 10 questions that people always ask you. And I said, well, the one question they always ask, I knew right off the top, and I had a producer friend of mine walk into my office at that moment, was, are these synchronicities still happening with you? And I said, oh, they happen all the time. And I told him a story about one of them. And I'll tell you that one right now, because it's kind of, do we have time right now, or are we going into a break here?
Yeah, how much time do we have? I think we have a couple minutes. So.
Okay, good. I can tell. So I went. What happened was I started telling the story about what happened to me a few years ago when I was out on the shoot. I was doing one of these promotions, and I doubled up in pain, and I almost died. I didn't know it, but I had a gallstone that had passed into my bile duct, and it shut down my pancreas, and it was like a 98% chance I wasn't going to make it. And the doctors had me in the hospital, but somehow I pulled through it, and that's a whole other story. But what happened was I got home. I had no food, no water to drink for 3 months. I was on an IV, and it was really, really bad. But they let me out of the hospital after 6 weeks, and I came home, and I wasn't doing well, and I had to go back in for some more surgery. And the night before that, my mom called me to talk to me about, the surgery coming up the next day. She was worried that she was going to lose me, that I wasn't going to be there. And my dad had died just like 8 months earlier, so she was really, worried about me leaving too. And I told her, look, Mom, don't worry, I'm never going to die. I'm not going to die. And she said, oh, I know how you feel about life and that you don't really die. And I said, well, no, I'm not going to die tomorrow either. I said, don't worry about it. And she said, well, but I talked to Dad, and Dad's going to be there right beside you, right by your head the whole time you're doing the surgery. And I said, well, all right, that's nice. And, the next day I get wheeled into the surgery room, and I'm waiting there in the surgery center, and the doctor comes walking up to me and sticks out his hand, and he says, hi, I'm Bob Rogers. I'm your anesthesiologist. Well, that was my dad's name. He had the name spelled, everything on the tag the exact way, and he's shaking my hand, and who stands next to you by your head the whole time in surgery is the anesthesiologist. And I started immediately, I said, of course you are. I couldn't expect anything else in my life. My mom said my dad was going to be here, and now here's a guy with my dad's name standing next to me.
We are coming up to a break. So hold on one second. I'm gonna remember your thoughts. Sure. Okay, and we're back, and I had to cut Randy off in this as a story, very powerful story he was telling us about synchronicity. So I'm going to let him continue his thought on that and finish that story.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah. Yeah, I just was telling them I'm going to let you finish your thought that I cut you off on.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't, it kind of trailed off there. But so what happened, and that occurred that morning on that surgery. Now, just a few years ago, I had the guy come in, and I told him this story. And I was telling you that I relayed this story to the guy that what had happened to me 8 years ago when I almost died. And so he says, well, that was a really cool story. You should put that in with your thing. And I said, oh, yeah, everybody loves to hear how synchronicity continues. But I said, I really loved hearing from my dad like that. I'd really like to hear from him like that again. I said, I feel him around me at different times, but I'd really like to hear from him in that same kind of a way. And I said this at 5 o'clock on that afternoon of September, or it was August 21st, I think, of 2009. And I went home that evening. 3 hours later, at 8 o'clock, I'm sitting in my chair, and something inside me, I'm always listening to that inner consciousness of me. It's saying, check your email. And I went up, and I got up and went over to the computer to check it, and the internet was down. So I do what most people do, and I shut that off of my conscious mind. I just sat down thinking, oh, I'll deal with it later. But it kept on coming back at me. No, check your email. So I pulled out my cell phone, which had a different, server, so I could download. I downloaded my emails into my phone, and I'm sitting here waiting. And when he come in, I went to click on him, and it clicked up with a list of emails. And the first one is from a Bob Rogers. Well, I'm sitting here shaking with my hand, realizing that 3 hours earlier I had said I wanted to hear from my dad, and now I'm getting an email from somebody named Bob Rogers. And I knew no other Bob Rogers other than having met that doctor, all those years ago. So I opened up the email, and this is what it said. It said, Dear Randy, I was on the internet today looking for a friend of mine named Steve Crow, and I came across your memorial to him with the flyby of the B-25 bomber and that up at Whiteman Airport that you put up. And obviously something happened to Steve. Could you please tell me what happened to my friend? And it was signed Bob Rogers from Evanston, Illinois. And I'm just shocked. I'm looking at this going, this is unreal. And what had happened was Steve Crow was a guy I worked with up at NBC, and up in the news department there. He was one of the engineers. And Steve and I both flew World War II planes, and he had passed away over a year earlier from some other health problems. But he kept his planes and worked on his planes up at Whiteman Airport, the same place that I do. And when we put up a memorial, we had a memorial service for him at the airfield, and we flew the B-25 over that he always flew. And when we did that, I shot it and put up a little thing on YouTube and forgot about it and put it up over a year ago on the internet. And now this guy comes online looking for him and, contacts me. So I sent him back a note telling him, what had happened to Steve. But I also told him the story about what had happened to me all those years ago with my dad, and then me asking to hear from my dad again, and then he contacted me today.
That's amazing.
And I said, I only have one question. What made you go on the internet looking for Steve today? And he said, well, it's really easy. He said, Steve just came into my thoughts, and I just had to go look for him, and the only place I could think to look was to Google his name, and he came up with your video. And I said, well, I want you to understand that. I said, this is your friend Steve, contacting you, saying hello, I'm here, I'm fine, and he's over on the other side. But I said, it's also my friend Steve and my dad both contacting me by going through somebody named Bob Rogers, and reconnecting through to me. So that's how these messages come through from the other side. People think you have to be psychic or something, and it's not. It's literally, it's occurring every day on some level or another with just synchronistic moments that turn your thoughts towards them. And when that thought is turned towards them, then you understand that it's them reaching out to communicate with you.
Yep.
Yes, it is. I agree.
Yep.
It's a beautiful story.
Yeah, and then when you take the time just to stop and be still just for a second, you realize that that's them trying to contact you and say, hi, I'm here.
And I'm fine.
And it comes in from somewhere. You don't know where this feeling comes through, why it came through, and it just does. It's so subtle, and they're literally, we're immersed in this other world, walking around inside of it. This spiritual world is like, in my book I talk about it, and that's when Kathy came to me in those out-of-body experiences, she was telling me that she would, if the world was a sponge and we were all out of the sponge material and immersed in the water, she would be where the water is, or she would be the water. That's where we're literally immersed inside of this other world, and it's just a frequency off of ours, just like these radio waves we're broadcasting over there. The air's full of all these waves. We can't see them, yet they're still there. And the same thing with the spiritual world. We can't
Yes,
and
that's
you
true.
just have to be able to it's all through feelings and love. That's what
Yes.
it vibrates on over there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. You know, you have one of the questions down here, and I think this is pretty powerful because a lot of people ask this question. Is number 8: is everything in our lives predestined, or do we have a choice?
Oh well, yeah, I always talk about that one. It's I tell everyone that that's a big question. Or do we only have destiny, or do we have free choice? And I said we've created what I call the illusion of free will. And I said it's the most perfect illusion because it seems complete. It seems like every time we're coming up to these crossroads, we're making this big decision. But really embedded in us is the script that we came in here with, too, because we're playing a role. You know, I'm not really Randy Rogers. You're not really Jeremy McDonald. We're these souls playing these roles. And embedded with us is that script of what we're supposed to do here in this life. So it has an illusional quality to it that it makes it look like everything we're doing is a big decision, but in reality, embedded in us is the path we're supposed to take.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I always say our true free will happens when we reconnect back to our spirit, and then it's really just being in flow. So I don't know if that's kind of goes with that, and I think that's pretty powerful. How much time?
I never had a past life experience done. Regression.
Really?
Very first card I ever pulled when I was doing my tarot cards. Actually, they were my goddess cards, and Isis came up, and it was past life regression. That was the first thing that she had told me to do, is have a past life. And I've never been able to find anybody or have the time to actually do it. And now, here you are. Randy, here you are.
Well, it's an easy process to do, and I should back up and tell people how I got involved in doing that, because in my book, I was introduced to this woman, this Russian woman named Lucy Postoloff out here, and she could put these needles in you and put you into a past life regression. I didn't even know what that was. I just went in to see her because a friend of mine told me I should, and I was open to anything just to get the experience and understand what could be possibly happening. And in the newsman mentality of me was always looking for the truth, not beliefs in anything. And that's what's great about these past life regressions it's not somebody telling you something, it's you experiencing it on your own. And when you come back with that, it's much more powerful. You understand that this is some part of you, and you recognize it immediately when you go into the session. And so I allowed Lucy to do that, and then, of course, that's when the book really takes off, is when I started telling her who I was, who she was, how we were all connected, and how I was connected to Kathy, and how the whole story came together. But what happened is when the book came out, then when I started talking about it to everyone immediately wanted to come out and see Lucy or experience this, and that's just not really possible, and the cost of it is really pretty high to do that. But I thought there's some way I can do something that let everybody experience this, and I knew that most people used hypnosis. So I sought out Dick Sutphin, who's been doing this since the 70s, and he's written over 20 books on the subject, and he's a really great hypnotherapist. Possibly, I would say the best I've ever known. He's just very, very good. And I trained under him, and I got certified as a hypnotherapist. And then I started going across the country doing workshops and private sessions, and that's what's been going on the last couple of years now, and the stories that are coming out of that are just nothing short of phenomenal. I have enough to write another whole book. I'm working on compiling all those right now, the stories that have come out of the sessions that I've been in.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to come back after this break, and we'll have more of Randy Rogers. All right, guys, we're back, and Randy's on the line from California. We were just talking about Lucy, the acupuncturist that he was seeing, and one of my questions to you is, do you still see Lucy?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Do you still see Lucy?
Oh, do I still see Lucy? Yes. I just saw her a few weeks ago. I went in and I did a session with her. I don't see her often like I did before, where I was in there. I was in there every day or every other day for a whole year. I was just coming in 2, 3, 4 times a week and session after session, because I was trying to understand just what was going on with the connection to Kathy. And since then, I kind of trail off, and I'll go see her once in a while, and we connect up. But and once in a while, some of the people call in and want to do a session with her and come out here and do that. But I've been, like I said, gone around the country doing the workshops. With the workshop, you can get as many people as you get in the room. You know, you can put them all under hypnosis at the same time, and they all go off into their own little past life session. And when we come back out, we share it. Everybody shares among them what story, what came out of it. It's a little different than a private session, because a private session will go on specifically, I'll be talking to you and you'll be responding back to me. So we're actually able to work our way through whatever story you're coming up with, whatever past life you're experiencing.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Randy, how do they find your book? Where is it selling at? Is it on Barnes and Noble or is it?
Again, it trailed off really something about the book, and I didn't.
I was
hear
just
it,
asking where can the listeners find your book?
Oh, find the book. Oh, okay, yeah, it's on my website at randolphrogers.com. You can go through that. It's RANDOLPHROGERS.com. So that's one way you can find it. The other, it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble on the line as well, and you can connect up with me on Facebook, any of those kind of things as well. I'm connected on all those places, so
awesome.
It's pretty easy to find.
Okay, cool. And then, so I just want to make sure they were able to find that and be able to purchase that book for you. So one of the other questions I have for you is that, and this is a question that comes up for me all the time when I'm talking about past lives with people, and they say they ask the question of why is it the people who have these regressions always end up being someone famous? And that's a common question I get a lot, and I just had you.
Yeah, well, so that's a funny thing, because people aren't always someone famous, although that's the ones that they write stories about. And you'll see 10 people have written books claiming that they were Amelia Earhart, for example. And everybody, well, how can they all have been Amelia Earhart? Well, they could, and in fact, you could have been Amelia Earhart, and so could I. And even if we weren't Amelia Earhart, even if we didn't specifically play the role, just the one person spirit playing it has the effect of everyone playing it, because we're all connected on that underlying part of us that, and I'm not talking about our characters we're playing, I'm talking about the souls that are driving each one of us. That's where we're all connected. That's why the movie Avatar was so huge. I mean, the underlying message in that movie was we're all connected.
That's right.
In fact, when I went to, I didn't even want to go see that movie when it came out. I didn't have any idea what it was about, and I didn't really care. But this friend of mine had worked on the movie A River Runs Through It, John Deach. He had done all the fly fishing stuff in the movie. He drags me to the movie with him and his kids, and I brought my son, and I sit there, and I was just mesmerized. The minute the story started up and I saw what it was about, and he leaned over to me and he said, "I can't believe how much of your book is in this movie." And I said, "Well," I said, "do you think it's a coincidence that James Cameron and I were both writing these things at the same time and they're coming out right now?"
Absolutely.
But that's what this message is for everyone right now. We're all connected, and
That's right.
and you've got to look past the character you're playing, and that's what the question is you're asking me right now. How can we all spin the same character? Well, I've got a great story to tell you about that and how that can be, and that had to do with a book signing I was going to do out here in Los Angeles. It'll be 2 years ago this coming December. And I was going up on that day. Something important happened to me, and I wasn't even supposed to. It was on the 23rd of December. And if you look at my book, you'll see that 23 is a big and important number on there. And it wasn't supposed to be the 23rd. It was supposed to be a couple weeks earlier. But on that day, we had a flood in L.A. here. It poured down rain, and the store called me and said we had to cancel. And on Monday, when I called to reschedule, I didn't get upset or anything, because I know everything happens for a reason. Just let it go. And,
that's right.
And on Monday, when I called, they scheduled it for the 23rd, and I thought, perfect, something's going to happen that day for sure. I knew, because that 23 just drives around me, and that was Kathy's birthday, that 23rd number. That's why it's important. So on the 23rd, something important happened, and I'll tell you in a minute what it was. But I rush up to the store, and I'm running in there, and 2 girls showed up. Only 2 women were there to hear this talk, and I thought, it doesn't bother me. If it's just one person, I'll do it. And then one of this psychic reader out of the back had come out and said he wanted to hear it, and he disappeared for a while. Then he came back, and he had this older gray-haired gentleman with him, and he said, "Randy, I chased this guy down the street. I just done a reading for him, and I thought he should hear your story." And he said, "Let me introduce him to you." And he reaches across, and he said, "Randy, this is George Lazenby." And I'm shaking George Lazenby's hand, and I'll tell you in a minute who he was. And I'm so excited. It's like Jesus Christ has appeared in front of me, and I'm just shaking. And I'm looking at my watch, and I said, George, I said, 40 years ago exactly tonight, I said 40 years ago in 1969, I was a 16-year-old kid up on a stepladder in a snowstorm in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and I was changing the marquee on the State Theater to read, "On Her Majesty's Secret Service, George Lazenby as James Bond." And I said, and you were my favorite James Bond. I said, I've talked about you for 40 years. Anytime people would bring up James Bond movies, I talked about the time you played James Bond. And you only played him once. But I said it was the most perfect James Bond movie.
He's the very first one that did Her Majesty's Secret Service, right?
Yeah, On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yep, I remember.
So I said, and the reason is it just had everything that the James Bond movie should have in it. And I said, and the other thing was it was the most romantic James Bond movie because you fell in love with Diana Rigg's character in the movie and you got married. I said, and that's the only movie James Bond ever got married in. I always envisioned my own life that way. And I said, you don't know this, but I said, less than an hour ago, I just left the jewelry store with my girlfriend that I've been with for over 10 years now. And I said, and she's been bugging me to get married. And finally, I just decided to let go because I didn't want to get married. I just thought our relationship was perfect the way it was. Why are we going to mess this up? I've been married before. I didn't want to go through it. And I'm always telling people, you got to let go. So finally, I decided to let go, and I buy her a wedding ring tonight, and then you show up. I said, this is unbelievable. I said, this is just an incredible moment of synchronicity of what I talk about. And I said, so I'm going to use you tonight when I do my talk. Now, do we still have time to tell the rest of the story? Or how much?
We're just checking.
You got 2 minutes.
We got 2 minutes.
Okay, good. So I said, all right, when I say the name James Bond, what comes to mind? And they immediately came up with, he's a British Secret Service agent, 007, has a license to kill, carries his gun with him all the time, and has all these hot women around him all the time on all these adventures to save the world from these madmen. And I said, that's the iconic character of James Bond. If you went to a movie and that character didn't emerge, say, for instance, you went in and all of a sudden the movie was about James Bond and he was a florist, they'd be out at the box office in droves saying, I want my money back. This isn't a James Bond movie. But because the character is set, everybody knows what to expect when they see a James Bond movie. But then I said to him, no, but how many people play James Bond here? And so we started listening, Sean Connery and Timothy Dalton and Roger Moore and Daniel Craig's playing him right now. And I said, and George, you've played James Bond. And I looked at him right then and I said, George, I said, but I'm going to ask you the most important question here tonight, and that's this. I said, George, are you James Bond? And he looked at me and he laughed. He said, well, no, I'm not James Bond. I played him once. And I looked back at him and I said, well, I'm not Randy Rogers. I played him once. And you're not Jeremy and Sylvianne. You're playing the characters once.
That's right.
And that's what this is about. You've got to get up in the morning, look past the character in the mirror, and understand the soul that's driving this character is capable. It's indestructible. First of all, you're never going to die, and the character sure may disintegrate. You may have a bus hit you when you walk out in the morning. You may have anything, but you won't die. You will continue to move on into the next and the next and the next life, and that's what this is all about. That's how more than one character can play the role of. And is happening right now. There are spirits out there on the timeline, because it's all happening at the same time.
Yes.
Every moment is happening right now.
Yes.
And we're just experiencing moment to moment because we create our time and dimension here. But on the other side, there is no time, space, or dimension. We're literally outside the box of it all, outside that computer that's running the movie.
Right.
And that's why everything stops. That's why you look at it and it's all happening at once, yet nothing's happening at the same time. So
right.
it's a very hard concept for some people to wrap their head around.
And
but right now, someone's out there playing Randy Rogers, and someone else is out there playing Jeremy.
And Randy, right now we're going to wrap up with that. We're just going to go to the break.
Sure.
Okay, guys, and we're back with Randy Rogers here this morning on Soul Talk Radio. Thank you for listening here to V109 FM. Randy was just talking about on the break. We were talking about the characters we play in this life, and he was talking about that prior to the break. And I really love how he describes our lives that we have, that our soul is actually playing, and those are characters. But he brought up an interesting point about famous people that he's done regressions on, and I wanted him to finish his thought, but maybe talk a little bit about that here on this segment. And so, Randy, if you could talk, maybe finish your thought from before the break, but then you were talking about the first James Bond, George. I can't remember his last name, to be honest with you.
George Lazenby, yeah.
And then but on the break you were talking about famous people that, their experience from regressions and stuff like that, and I thought that was a really good point to bring up.
Yeah, but, I did I've done some people, in fact, one of them is a really good friend of mine. She's she's got cerebral palsy, and her name's Jerry Jewell. She's an actress out here. She played on, oh boy, what am I'm thinking of here? I'm trying to remember the show she played on back in the 70s, but she also played recently in Deadwood. She was the saloon keeper's cleanup lady there in the show, and she had a really big role in that because she was playing with this handicap of cerebral palsy, and she's such a dynamic character when you meet her, and you wonder what. And this whole knew that coming into this lifetime that she was going to be playing a role of somebody with cerebral palsy, and yet you meet this person, and they're just the energy it requires to take on that character and survive, and where other people might just give it up or not want to go on with life, she just flourishes, and now she's on to some other shows she's picked up on, and Jerry is just a beaming example of how a soul can put energy into a role that if anybody else would be afraid to even step into it. But she's going to gain the biggest spiritual growth out of it, though. That's what it's all about in playing these roles, is when you take on the role and all the hardships that come with that role are the karmic lessons that you're bringing them on to you. No one's putting karma onto you. It's not something that somebody does to you. It's something you do to yourself. You bring on these karmic lessons to see how you'll respond to them. And you always want to pass the test. You always want to do it from compassion and love and even neutrality. You don't want to respond in this fighting back kind of thing, anger, because all it's going to do is build up bigger and roll over you again and just keep coming at you because you're not responding the correct way to the lessons that are being applied to you.
Wow.
And Jerry's one of those examples. I've done numerous regressions with her, and all these past lives she's in, there was nothing famous about them. Yet in some ways, she's playing a famous person right now. She's been on television in multiple roles. Everybody recognizes her from the TV shows and that she's played in. But the fame everyone has played. Like I said, multiple people have played on the role of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington and all the famous characters. That role is still out there on the timeline. It's just cast for us because we're living in what's called the moment right now. And a very famous guy wrote a book about that called The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. And if you haven't read that book, it's a great book to read. It gives you an understanding of how we have to stay in this moment, because that's all we have on the timeline. We can't go back to, a half hour ago when we started the program. We can't go forward to see how it's going to end today. We can only be in this moment right now with each other. So you want to really immerse yourself in that moment. Shut off everything else you're worrying about and stay focused in what we're talking about here and staying with it. And everything just goes smoothly. There is no problem. Everything in your life is fine. Don't worry about, how the mortgage is going to be paid from now. You just continue to move moment to moment, and things will occur that help you to survive this life we're in.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, because then you don't get to experience the blessing of this life,
right?
Because you're so far in the future, and so far in the past, and you're not getting to experience the character you came in to be. That's really, I love that story.
That's inspiring.
Very inspiring. So, I just lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
So where does
you're in the moment.
We're in the moment.
You're in your own private moment.
Well, sometimes what happens on the show is I get so into what they're saying that I have to pull myself back. And so where does your story go from here, and what are you working on now?
Well, right now I'm continuing with the workshops, and I just came off of doing a month and a half of touring back. I was up into Las Vegas for a week and Phoenix for a week, and then over to Pennsylvania. I had my 40th class reunion, so I wrapped that around a couple of workshops in Pennsylvania, and then a couple of days of private sessions in near Indianapolis, Indiana, and then I came back and up to Portland, and now I'm back to LA again. And So I'm in the middle of doing some changes here with my company and with some of the stuff I have going here, so I can open myself up more to going out and continuing with the workshops. And then I want to start on another, putting this other book together, start on that this winter. But I'm also shooting footage of some of these different modalities that I come across whenever you go out doing all this, because there's all kinds of things out there in the metaphysical world that people always wonder about, and you hear about these different things of Reiki and meditations and yoga and astrology, and that's one of the ones I was always interested in, was astrology, because that's really the roadmap of your life when you're born, that the stars are aligned a certain way to put you on this path, and it always intrigued me how these people can come up with this knowledge of who you are and what you're here to do. And so I've started doing some interviews with some astrologers, and I'm putting together a show which is going to step through all these different modalities and really investigate them kind of more thoroughly and let people understand how they work.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. My birthday is December 21st. And when I first heard that the Mayan calendar ends December 21st, 2012, that was where my, what?
2011.
Oh, okay. Everybody say 2011.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that was a start for me to go through my spiritual journey, to find out what this Mayan calendar was, what's going on, how does it relate to me. I mean, it was just a date, it was the day I was born. So it's totally amazing how my life has spiritually progressed just by wanting to know why the Mayan calendar stopped at 2012 or December 21st. I thought it was going to be a great birthday party. 46th birthday party. Thank you, God. And I want everybody there with me.
I tell people that this date of December 21st, 2012 isn't the end of the world. I said it's the beginning of a new one. I said, and in between now and before we get to that date, it's going to seem like our world is disintegrating around us. But it's just trying to level it back down, so when we start up when there's this new shift and this transition, this new vibration, that we leveled everything that was old around us. And that's what everyone's seeing happening right now, with the economy just sinking, and everything's moving really slowly. And there's a reason for that, too. I keep telling people we're heading towards this point, and I know this timeline seems a straight line, but it's really not. It's more like a snake, and it's kind of winding back and forth, and there are all these little changes that we're making that are trying to stop it from going where it's going, aren't going to really stop it. It's just slowing it down, but it's still going to go. It seems like a slow-motion train wreck till we get there. And you have to make it I keep telling people, there's no fear in letting everything collapse. I said, the problem is we didn't let it collapse a couple years ago. Whenever they bailed out the banks and the insurance companies and the car things, we should have let that all collapse then. And we'd be on our way to building it up already.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, we put a Band-Aid.
We artificially inflated it, so now when it collapses, and there's a reason we artificially inflated it with all this quantitative easing and that's so when it finally collapses, it will be total. There will be a complete collapse, and then when we rebuild, it will have to be different. It won't be based on greed and Wall Street and the things that everyone's protesting about out there now. You can see the revolution coming here. You can feel it as sure as they did back in 1776. And this change, though, is going to be dynamically different. We're going to have a different world when we're done.
It's a spiritual change.
Definitely.
You're right.
Oh, it is.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We're coming up to the end of the segment, and we will be right back. All right, guys, and we were just having a little bit of synchronicity here on the break when because I knew somebody up in the Pennsylvania area close to by where Randy grew up, and then he was on a show yesterday, and that person was talking about Altoona, Pennsylvania, and I was talking about Altoona, Pennsylvania, and so within a 24-hour period, that I'm not sure exactly where that goes, but there's a connection there, and I think that's I think it's worth saying, because those are the little things that that could grow into something that we don't even know.
Well, yeah, that what you're talking about right there, those synchronistic moments, people do have trouble interpreting them, and I try to explain to them what these synchronicities are. I said they're literally markers we put in the play of our life, that we're in here doing this play. And those are the marks we have to hit. When we hit the marks, the synchronicities just abound around us, and you're seeing them all the time. And they're markers, so it's showing you're hitting your mark on the stage. You're right where you should be, right where the camera will pick you up, and right where your life's going to continue flowing down that smooth path that it's on. And that's what those marks are. Don't try to overanalyze them, because sometimes all they are is to make you feel good, to make you know that you're on. They're markers along the path of your life.
Yeah.
Deja vus are the exact same thing. Whenever you come across a deja vu, ooh, I've been here before. Well, because you have, and that's a marker in your life that you're on the path that you're supposed to be.
Yeah. The deja vu is a little trickier, too, because it's that moment where you're doing something, and all of a sudden, for a few seconds, you have this, I've seen this before, that's what deja vu means, seen before.
Right.
And you look and you're going, how did that slip? You kind of slipped through that crack of time and saw something ahead. Well, actually, it's already happened. You're just in here living the moment now on the path. And so the mask is pulled over you, so you stay in character. And that's what everyone does. For the most part, they stay in character, and they get emotionally involved in everything. When the drama plays up, they immediately jump in and start to play the character and fight out the role. Well, now that you know who you are, you can, when you come up to those drama moments, you can step outside your character and allow the drama to swirl around you and have a clearer outlook of how you should respond to this, rather than jump in and immediately want to fight it or do whatever it is that you're thinking you should do. And once you have that knowledge of it, people start to look at you differently. They start to recognize you as somebody, of a leader, of somebody that really has some better insight into the thing, because you're not getting sucked into every little thing that's thrown in front of you.
That's right. You have to take the stance of the observer. Take a step out of everybody, out of your life, out of their lives, and see the whole thing, and then you have a better perspective of what's really going on in the moment.
So
exactly.
You mentioned in the book that how you came up with the name, The Key of Life, and but does that cross reference to our soul or our spirit? The key of life. So when we're going into our past and looking at the synchronicity, does that help us unlock that spirit within us?
Well, the name. Well, the way I got the name was within the book that I ended up meeting my own. Whenever I do these regressions with people now and these hypnosis sessions, I not only take them through a past life, but I take them up to higher self, it's called. And when you go to higher self, you're going to meet your spirit guide, or some people call it their guardian angel. And this is the most exciting part of doing a past life regression, because this is where all the answers come out to you. And once you meet that spirit or that soul that's guiding you, and it can be one, it can be two, literally there's legions of them out there surrounding you, but usually there's one specific soul. And like I said, some people call it their angel or their guardian angel or their spirit guide. But once they meet them, they get all these answers that they needed to what is going on in their life, and they can take them back and show them things and have them better understand why events are occurring within their life. So it's a very powerful moment when you get to meet that soul that's guiding you and helping you along. And in my book, I met my soul, the soul that was guiding me, and his name was, his last incarnation when he was on this earth was L.W. Rogers, and he was an author and a president of the American Theosophical Society and these other things. And in my book, you'll see how I came across this, how this all came through to me, and then I met him in some sessions with Lucy, and I described him completely in detail. And I never met the guy in this life. He passed away a few months before I was born. He was, in his 90s by then. He had been born in the 1860s,
Wow.
And here he is now, dies and I knew all this before I ever met him. I was telling people about him, and then whenever I found him, everything was exactly the way I said it was about him. And so much so that I knew exactly what he looked like, because I was in a session in Lucy's, and I saw him in this session. And he was really short when I met him. I didn't understand. I was expecting this big guy, and all of a sudden this short little person shows up in this session, and I described him in detail. And then later I met his sons, one of his sons who was still alive up in Ojai. And I saw the guy driving down the road in the car, and I got real excited. I'm going, oh, this is him. And Michelle, my girlfriend, was saying to me, what? Well, how do you know this is him? He looks just like his dad in the regression session I did. And sure, I stopped this guy on the road and I introduced myself, and he's blown away that I know something about his dad who died before I was born, and I'm telling him all these details. So everything kind of flowed with him guiding me along. And LW, during these sessions I was in, he always had this rod in his hand that emitted this kind of, it was an overwhelming feeling of love, this vibration of love, and he called this the key of life. And that's what it is. The key of life is really, is just this simple word of love. I mean, that's what it's all, everything vibrates on this other side, on that emotion. There's nothing else there. There's no other feeling you'll get when you're over there other than an overwhelming sensation of being saturated in the most incredible love you can imagine. It's just the best feeling to be there. I mean, that's why I kept doing these sessions. It was just, it was better than anything you could take as a drug or any, it was addictive as anything you could possibly want to put in you, and there's nothing going in you. That you're just sitting there floating out in this immersion of love on this other side. So when he would always have this rod with him and called it the key of life, I named my book that. And there's more reasons beyond that. And in fact, my whole book, when you look at the cover, it has all these hidden symbols inside of the cover. In fact, the end of the story is in the cover as well. And if you're really, really psychic enough, you could look at the cover and see what the end of the story was going to be. And I tell people, once you're done reading it and you can't figure it out, call me and I'll tell you. And then whenever you look at the cover, you'll never look at the cover the same way again. You'll always see this part of the story in it, and you'll be amazed at how it was right there in front of you the whole time and you can never see it.
Wow.
And that's what I'm seeing. And see, I walk down the street and I see things differently than other people. I see the connections to all these things. I'm always recognizing these synchronistic moments immediately when they're flowing around me.
Yeah, me too. I think that's awesome. Isn't that a great way to live? I mean, that brings the love and the happiness at all times. I mean, that frequency of love, and it's just amazing. I wish everybody would experience that all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what makes life so exciting.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
when we start seeing all that, it just, you stop seeing life as this chore and it becomes magical.
That's right, because you stop to wonder, when is my next love session going to happen?
Yeah.
And it's just the fact that you're looking at life through the eyes of love. It's happening all the time.
Yeah, that gets me pretty excited.
Yeah, me too, all the time.
Yeah, and when you start to do that, when you start to really get this grasp of who you are, this character you're playing, and you're letting go of these things, and you're starting to understand the power that you really have in your own life, you start to realize there's a lot of healing involved in that.
Yes.
And you can let go of all these illnesses that are coming into you and these other things that are going on by just changing your attitude of the way you're looking at things. And all of a sudden, everything makes a shift, and you really are living on that higher vibration that everyone's seeking to find right now.
And they'll be drawn to you too when you're on that that frequency. The law of attraction is the law of attraction. Oh, we got 3 seconds?
30. Well,
30 seconds.
20
seconds.
Yeah,
Okay.
20 seconds.
They throw up the 3 at me. It's like, dang, I was just getting a roll.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to actually end this segment and come right back because
we'll talk about love later.
Okay, so we're back here in our last 10-minute segment of Soul Talk this morning. We had pulled up Randy's book cover that he was talking about in the prior break. Definitely check him out on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and you can pull this up and look at the book cover, and then definitely go ahead and buy it because it is a good book, and you'll learn quite a bit about yourself and quite a bit about how synchronicity and past lives and his story. But I'm going to go ahead and ask Randy to take over here for the next few minutes and talk about any points that he wanted to bring across to the listeners. So definitely going to turn it over to you, Randy. So.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, that's a wide open subject. We can go into a lot of different areas here about the book. When I wrote the book, I was having a lot of different dreams where I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd write down what was happening within my dream or what was flowing through me, and a lot of it all had to, and at that point had to do with who we were and how we came into this being, and why people always ask, why are there so many more souls here on Earth than there were in the beginning? How can there be more? Well, that's the growth that we've experienced, and as we grow, it's like amoebas or whatever you want to call it. It's like a hologram where you literally split. And so when I'm looking at you or Sylvianne or anybody out there, when I look at that other person that I meet in my life, you've got to look at that person and recognize what part of me is in them, and because they're all part of the characters that we created on the timeline. People, again, like getting hung up on the movie star mentality, and I tell them, if you want to see the biggest movie star in the world, look in the mirror. That's you. You're the star of the movie. The whole world revolves around you, and the whole world revolves around me, and each individual out there has their own little movie going on, and you're the star of it. And then when we interact with each other, that's when we play the supporting roles. So we play both the star and the supporting roles. So when I'm doing something with my friend and helping them, I'm playing that supporting role to them. But the dynamic thing to understand here is that we're all connected, and I can literally go take a beggar off the street in India, and within talking to him probably less than an hour, I could figure out within 6 moves how we're connected. Would find some connection of friends or something that binds us together in the same story. And that's what happened when my book went out. Is people read the book and they immediately contact me telling me how they're connected to my story. And just you, we were talking a little bit, and you immediately are connected to somebody in the close to where I grew up in in the Altoona and Johnstown area. And so, and then I'm sure when you read through the book, there are more things and things about numbers. It's always with numbers and dates and places I've been. I just am inundated with everyone saying they're connected to me. And I realize that we're all connected, and that's what the story is about, is to understand the connection and start to understand there's a different way to live this life right now, not to, we don't have to get caught up in the drama. We can rise above it, realize that connection to each other. And when we do, as we split and more souls kept coming onto this earth, and whenever we finish that life and we go back over it, that's when we go back to the source. And if you want to, you can name that source God or whatever, Muhammad, whatever name you want to give it. There's multiple names, but that's who we are. We're literally a piece of God. We're a part of that whole, we're fragmented. God fragmented into all these souls to get the growth, and then we come back to it. And that's where this life comes from on this planet that we created here. It's an ebb and flow. It's just constantly flowing in and out of here. And it's really a beautiful thing once you understand how it's working.
I believe that we're God's thoughts. And if you stop to think about the ethereal part of our spirit side, of our connectedness, we're God's thoughts, and that's how we're connected.
Yep. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and if all the universe is created through thoughts and feelings.
Thoughts and feelings.
Then
we're all God's thoughts and feelings.
But I think that's beautiful. Yeah. I think it's absolutely gorgeous.
I do too.
So.
Well, your thoughts are creating the entire world. Everything around us is an illusion. There's nothing real about anything here. It's all a play that we've created, and we're constantly creating it and constantly changing it. And that's what that's where the illusion of choice comes from. You know, we're seeing these little changes that occur, but it's still the timeline we're on, and there's still events that we have set in motion that are going to happen, and we're moving towards those events. Sure, we may change the path a little bit back and forth, but it's still going ahead to the point that we're supposed to reach. So the thing that really gives you the satisfaction in this life is being able to recognize those synchronicities, understand you're on the correct path, and really feel good about it, and letting go of all the hatred and other things that you want to have rise up out of you whenever things appear to be not going your way. Maybe you can let go of those things, that everything smooths out again. So there's a real trick to it, and some people are catching on faster than others. Others will just continue to fight it the whole way, and it's just it's something that it requires a complete letting and a trust and a faith in the universe is going to take care of you, and you're going to move down that path. And the people that learn that quickly are going to survive in this, the things that are coming through in the next few years here.
Yes.
Yeah, a friend of mine, she says that in life, you can either work in resistance or flow, or love or fear, of course. And she gives an example where you put your hands up and press them like you're pressing up against a wall, and you can feel all the tension in your muscles in your body. Or you can pull them back and have with your palms up and your elbows at your body, and be in flow and allowing and receiving. And it kind of really brings it into what you're talking about, the resistance or just going into it, because, if you're just in the flow of life, then, you're really enjoying it.
Yes.
And but if you're in the resistance of it, you're constantly in anguish or I call it victim mode. So I really...
Well, when I started in this, people always ask me, well, how did you come from this little town in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and end up working in Hollywood with all these stars? And I said, well, the funny thing is, when I started out in my life, all I knew that what I was a photographer, but I didn't make it go down a certain path. I didn't, for instance, say that I had to be a National Geographic photographer, even though I may have thought that's what I was going to be. I just went wherever life took me. And when the door opened for the newspaper, I jumped into that. And then when it opened for the television, I moved into that. And I never beat my head against the door that wasn't going to open. I jumped in the river of life and went where the river took me. I didn't try to swim upstream or sideways or anything. I just let it take me.
Yeah.
And that's what the difference is in between lives here. A lot of people jump in and immediately start swimming against the current, and
Right.
It's not going to get them anywhere except worn out.
It just makes them tired and not like life.
Well, I'm really glad that
Yeah.
actually you're one of the listeners today is a young film producer. He's 23 years old and a photographer. And when I told him you were going to be on the show, he was excited about the metaphysical aspects, but he was also excited that you're a Hollywood producer. so I'm glad that he got to hear that story of you coming from Johnstown and just kind of living and letting it go.
Yeah, I just did a talk in Johnstown about that, and they want me to come back and talk with my high school about how I went from that little town into doing this, and it's really, I'm telling you, the biggest advice I can give you is to let go and go with the flow. Don't get a preconceived idea of where you're supposed to be. Kind of just be open to it. Know who you are is the thing. It's always a knowing. I never wanted anything in my life. There's a big difference between wanting and knowing. There are tons of people out there that want to be an actor or an actress because they think that's where the money and the fame is. But who are you really? What is the character you're here to play? Well, I knew that I was a photographer. That's the one thing I knew, and I had the camera with me, and I just took pictures all the time, and it got me to where I am today. And now I know that I'm also a writer and a director and these other things in my life that are coming into play now, and so I'm allowing those to just move me in a new direction.
Sweet.
And you're just living. And thank you very much, Randy, for bringing that up. Guys, we're wrapping up the show here in the last few seconds of the show. I wanted to thank Randy for being on the show.
Thank you, Randy.
And
you're welcome. I really had a great time, Jeremy and Sylvianne. It was fun talking with you.
And guys, just for the listeners, check his website out at Randolph. That's RANDOLPH Rogers, ROGERS.com. And you'll be able to connect with him there or on Facebook. He is on my Facebook, so definitely you can go ahead and check him out there as well. Go and look at his book and purchase it. And we're also talking about him maybe taking a vacation here in the Tampa area. Yay! So we're excited about that. Anyways, we're going to wrap up the show, and you can check out other things at www.soultalkradio.org. Have a good week.
Bye.